There's no better feeling than a personal win, and the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you do just that. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
By the time you're finished listening to this Pepsi Zero Sugar, you'll be 15 seconds closer to kickoff. Stock up now. Bengals game day is so close, you can almost taste it. Bengals watching. Better with Pepsi.
I'm Carol from Sunbury, Ohio. I'm a Republican, but I don't care who does the job as long as the job gets done. That's why I like Sherrod Brown. He stood up to both parties on China and worked with Republicans to fight fentanyl because Sherrod fights for Ohio. That's leadership.
Paid for by friends of Sherrod Brown.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to an Anfield Index special. It's normally that time in the month where we do our big decisions. We ask the big questions, we prompt the discussion, and we make our decision either way. This time, there's a bit of a media matters twist on it as well. So, in the hot seat, and we'll see how hot it gets, is the renowned and the respected David Lynch. David, we're looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it sounds like you're going to grill me now, so I'm a little bit nervous after that intro, to be honest. But yeah, no, there's some good stuff to talk about here and some big issues facing the club, so I'm sure there's plenty to get into.
Yeah, indeed. There are big issues facing the club, ladies and gents. So we're talking contracts, we're talking number nines, we'll even be talking the midfield and who is your strongest preference there. So let's get straight into the contracts. I mean, let's start on the positive. We'll save the juicy stuff a little bit, David. That it seems that we know Jarell Quansah, he has put his name on the dotted line. That's great news. And all the suggestions are that Ibou, from reports, he's getting closer, that you have the feeling that's expected to be done. It's fair to say. That's good news, isn't it? That is really good news. We shouldn't underestimate that Ibou contract if he gets done.
Yeah, unbelievably good news, because I just think, it's been one that's kind of been on my mind for a little while, really, in terms of it's just getting close. 2 years is when it gets a bit risky, when other clubs start sniffing around, and then it becomes difficult to kind of resist bids. And I know a few question marks over his injury record, but I think he's shown this season, hasn't he, just how good he is and how important he is. And, particularly with Van Dijk getting on a little now, although we still think he can operate at the peak of his powers for a little longer yet. But to have the guy who for me, I genuinely do believe that he's up there as possibly the second best defender in the Premier League at the moment, or centre-back anyway. I know there's a lot of criticism of Arsenal's centre-backs in the they've got a lot of protection. I understand that, but I still do think they're both absolutely fabulous players. But I think Konate is absolutely up there with them, and then Van Dijk is out on his own. So keeping a player who is that good is really, really important, and he seems happy. Seems like he's enjoying being at Liverpool, and as much as when we will talk about the three big ones, this was a bit of a sort of a difficult one that was inherited by the new sporting director, and so that there's been swift progress on that, and that we're very close to a resolution, which is my understanding that it's quite close now. That is, I think, really, really good news and should be celebrated.
Yeah, I agree. It almost feels like if we hadn't, we wouldn't have learned our lessons, because we let Ibou get into the last 12 months that way as well. So yeah, waiting for this to get signed, but feels like a positive. I suppose the first big decision I'm going to ask you, do you feel this has always been in the works? It's taken a little while to break, shall we say, or become a story? Or do you think Hughes, Edwards, the powers that be, were looking and thinking, let's just see how his injury record goes again this season? What do you reckon to that one?
No, I I think they would have been working on this anyway. The hope was always going into the season that the likes of Jota and Konate would be available more frequently. I mean, it's been a really good start, but touch wood, because anything can kind of go wrong on that front. But you hope he's going to be more consistently available now. But I don't think there was any question over his quality. And I've always sort of been one of those where people have said, Liverpool should carry 5 centre-halves because Konate's injured all the time. I've sort of fell on the side of thinking, well, if you accept that he's going to be injured all the time, then he should just be sold. There's no point really. But clearly there was a belief that, different training methods, a different way of looking after him, sort of the thing I wrote about the medical team and kind of showing an excess of caution around players being involved in training sessions when they've got niggles. Those changes seem to have really done him good. And clearly with that belief in mind, they always clearly thought that they could get more out of him in terms of availability. And hopefully we will continue to see that, but no question marks over his quality. And I think, I do think this is one that has sort of been in the pipeline for a while, but that when the new structures come in, they thought we're going to have to accelerate this because we can't let another one get close to a year out from the end of the deal. So I don't think they were sort of, taking the risk of, let's see how he gets on in the first few games, because I guess it's a small sample size as well. And we could, in terms of his injury record, could be terrible for the rest of the season. But I think protecting his value and just locking him down on the optimistic view that he will be available and he will be this good for the remainder of the season, I think that was always one that they needed to look at pretty quickly.
I think that's fair. At best, he continues and keeps up his level. At worst case, it's asset protection, isn't it? It keeps him safe that way for the club. No two ways about it. Speaking of asset protection, there's 3 big players whose technically value is decreasing by the day for Liverpool. Yeah, we're going to go there. I mean, there was an interesting piece yesterday, I don't know if you saw the clip, that the Wrap did, and Neil Atkins and Neil Dockin were talking about it, that actually if these 3 left, there'd be a bit of furore. And part of that was on the basis that, and we've discussed this before, for whatever reason, you can say it's always waiting for the right player. Liverpool don't sign many players recently. And you can call that a difficulty, but just the facts and the numbers are there. So there's that essence of, well, if we struggle to sign players because of maybe the quality, the specific nature of what we want, you probably want to really keep the ones that you've got for obvious reasons. So can you understand why that frustration is sort of building at the moment with fans that way?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. Actually, I did see that clip, and I think it was Ibou actually sort of said, if it's so hard to identify world class players, you should be doing everything you can to keep hold of them. And I did think that was a really, really good point actually, and sort of throws another light on this really in terms of what Liverpool need to do really around it. But I think in terms of anger building now, one thing I would say about this is that, we can't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. We only get snippets. Even, I only get snippets. I will always say that I don't know absolutely everything that's going on at Liverpool, that's for sure, and would never pretend that I do. You hear this and that at times, and you write certain things or whatever, but I really don't think situations like this are worth expending energy on, particularly because you could be angry now that it's got to this point, and then it resolves itself. Trent signs next week, Van Dijk signs next week, Mo a couple of weeks. I just don't think it's worth kind of worrying about, because these things happen very, very quickly. I mean, if I'd have asked you, 4 weeks ago, what's the Konate situation with his contract, I don't think either of us would have been able to say that close to signing the deal. So it does come from nowhere when you get these breakthroughs, and that Liverpool are kind of putting the foot down now to really try and get these done and negotiate with the players. So it will just come from nowhere. That's one thing I would say about it. It might be worth being angry if we get to a situation where all 3 go on free transfers. I think that would be baffling, and personally don't expect it to be anything like that. I really, really do not expect that outcome to happen from here, to be honest. But there would be a genuine reason for anger then. But I think at the moment, the anger, the worry, for me is not really worth it. And I just think, let's hold fire. It's, it'll start to get a little worrying if we get to January, I would say. There's still quite a bit of time to go till that. And, we know that Liverpool are pushing hard to get these sorted. And I still feel that confidence that they will.
I was going to say, because I know we talked about January before. There's an essence there, and I've seen some of these comments in our Discord, and I think there's a fairness to it, because it is a big decision to talk about. Can you understand the sentiment from certain fans that the longer this rolls on, the bigger potential it has to almost derail or at least start distracting from the season. If we start doing well, we know the tough period we've got coming up. If we're still talking about this in a month or two's time, the focus is shifting on the field. And we saw with the Klopp situation last year, it does distract eventually.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it will just be the main topic of every press conference until there's a decision made either way. Virgil always constantly starts with us in the mix zone and talks to us, but again, it'll be the first question up every single time until it gets kind of sorted out. So yeah, there is a chance that it becomes a big storyline and it kind of takes away. I mean, they are good professionals, aren't they? You like to think they don't get distracted, but if it does become the main talking point that, you know, over and over again, then there is that chance that it will have some impact in the dressing room. And, you know, maybe other players who signed think, God, we're going to lose some quality here at the end of the season. That's a little bit of a concern. Were we going in the right direction or whatever? So, yeah, I kind of get that. So, again, just emphasises the need to get wrapped up as quickly as possible, really. And again, I understand why that wasn't in the summer, because they had so much to do. And that is not just on transfers, because obviously they did only kind of sign Chiesa or whatever, and they didn't do loads there. So, and they tried for Zubimendi and that didn't work out. And then a few sales or departures on loan or whatever. But it was doing all that whilst embedding a new recruitment team, getting them used to everything, how everyone works, how, you know, meeting each other and getting used to ways of working. Then all the changes that were made to medical staff and all the things. And there were so many other changes behind the scenes of appointments of staff who have not really been heralded or spoken about much. But, you know, quite a few changes have gone on, really. And that is all the responsibility of the sporting director and obviously Michael Edwards as well. So they did have a lot on. But, you know, once the season started and that kind of, the summer was over, I think that was the point at which it was really, really important to get things moving. And they are doing that now. But I would say, yeah, it's just that January's lurking now, and that's the need where sort of they really need to accelerate it and get it done, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know the talk here, that seems pretty evident through all the stories. I kind of wanted to look at you, because I know you mentioned Van Dijk. Trent is probably the natural focus for most people, isn't he? Because of his age, his profile, and there's always that element of we are potentially talking about a £150 million footballer walking out the door and getting nothing back in return there. And I know we've talked about the negotiations and all that. Do you think there comes a bit, this is one of the big decisions I wanted to ask you, where Liverpool will look and say, all the chips are on Trent's side of the table, we need him to stay. It will come down like, no, we just need to make him the best possible offer, whether that makes him the top earner, whatever it is, but try everything to get him to stay.
Yeah, I think he's put himself in a strong position. And one of the things that doesn't really get mentioned in this, by the way, is that he's signed a 4-year contract last time. Clearly, I think with this in mind, he's coming into this situation. Obviously, maybe would have thought it'd be resolved quicker than this and earlier, maybe with a year left or whatever. But obviously, the upheaval around Klopp changed things a lot. But obviously, it put him in a really, really strong negotiating position, and it's getting stronger as time goes on. But I also think Liverpool will recognise that, and I think there will be a desperation on their side. It will look so bad if they lose him, and so I do think there will be a desperation there to, you know, Liverpool won't want to give in and collapse on everything, but I think there will be certain sort of concessions they will make to keep hold of him. And we've seen before that they can give out big contracts. He gave a massive one out to Salah, one that maybe people didn't expect or think that Liverpool had up the sleeve, really. So they are absolutely capable of doing it. And again, you know, why I lean towards optimism on this is that it would look so bad to lose him. And I also think, you know, Trent's side of things as well, you kind of think, you know, Real Madrid must be really, really tempting for him. I mean, as much as you love Liverpool, that would be an amazing experience to go out there and try that, learn a new language, live in a new culture. And obviously it's Real Madrid, for goodness sake. But I do think also that the pull of Liverpool and you know, the fact is the club he supports and the captaincy being there, he'd get an absolutely humongous wage packet if he does sign on. There's a lot that appeals around the Liverpool offer as well, and I do lean towards optimism on it and think that Liverpool will give up some concessions and put on a huge offer on the table, and I think that in the end, and also for Trent, you know, how it would look in terms of deciding to leave. I mean, you can blame Liverpool up to a point, but if he does decide to just go, and it's kind of, he leaves on a free and Liverpool get nothing. It's not great for his legacy, is it? So I do think that emotional factor is there as well. So I still lean towards that one getting done, to be honest.
Fingers crossed on that one. And I suppose the only other one we've not really talked about, and I think it's one we have talked about in previous pods, there's probably a bit of less confidence, let's call it that way, around Mo Salah and his deal. And I mean, I'm quite open on this, that ideally for me, something like a 2-year plus a year option, something like it's triggered on appearances, the club can trigger it, something like that. I know we've talked about the length of contract for Salah. Again, we've now seen concessions with Trent. Do you think there's a possibility the club would look at concessions with Salah, as in, do you know what, if he's insisting on 3 years just because it is Mo Salah, give him 3? Or do you think his age triggers against him? That's the next big decision.
I think they are less likely to make concessions. I just don't think you want to be, because 3 years is so far away. It's the entirety of this season and then another 3 seasons. It is a long way away. See, you get to the end of this season and then the season after that, to be still paying him 350 grand a week. I imagine that the numbers won't be quite the same, or the output you're getting. It's just hard to imagine it. I think that will be a red line for Liverpool personally. I just don't think 3 years is possible, particularly because I do think this will be a deal on probably the same money he's on now. I just think 2 years will be the upper limit of that for Liverpool. To be honest, I really, really struggle to see a world where he gets 3, because I just think there's too much risk. I would go as far as to say, and again, this is my opinion, people can disagree, that's absolutely fine. It's impossible for me to imagine that at the end of a 3-year contract, so in 4 years' time, effectively, the output will be the same from Salah or really even close to that. I just don't think it's possible. And I think Liverpool will see it in a similar way. And that, for me, that's why I just can't see a 3-year deal getting done. To me seems a lot more likely. I mean, ideally, Liverpool, I guess, would love to sign a 1 and say, we'll give you a 1 after that, maybe. But I think 2 years will be the compromise. And maybe if Salah's desperation stay, which he kind of underlines that he would like to, is enough, then could they possibly reach an agreement on that? I think it feels more possible. I would personally, I just feel my opinion on this rather than sort of something I understand, but I would feel like I just couldn't see a 3-year deal being handed down at this point.
Any concession in the element that you think the club could look at it and go, all right, even if he's not quite at the same level he is now, even at a 75%, say Mo Salah is still better than most forwards in the world. The Saudi option could still be there, particularly other clubs. Do you think that will come into it, or do you think it is going to be it's future output only?
The problem they've got with the Saudi thing is I've seen a few tweets about that. And kind of that's the get out there is that Saudi could come in and pick him up. But I know from, and this is very much my understanding, is that from Salah's side of things is that the ideal way to leave Liverpool would to do it on a free transfer, because of the contract implications, that the money isn't being soaked up by a transfer fee being paid to Liverpool. So again, and I guess in an ideal world from his side is that he plays at this level for another 3 seasons on top of this. But like I say, I just struggle to see Liverpool offering that. So I don't know really. I don't think the Saudi get out is necessarily something that Salah is looking at from his perspective and thinking, oh yeah, I want them to pay the big transfer fee to Liverpool, even though that would work for Liverpool and would protect them. Is knowing that money would be there. It's whether Salah would prefer to probably leave on a free transfer, really. So it's a tricky one, really, in terms of how that one plays out. But as I say, I just really feel that a 3-year, I'd be massively surprised. Is my take on it. I've been wrong before many times, but that's just my feel for it.
Yeah, it's a tough one to see. I think probably the big decision to ask you. Most people are leaning this way, and again, this is feeling rather than fact or anything like that, but from that essence, more confident on Trent and Virgil, less so on Salah. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I just think with Trent, the desperation to keep him because of how bad it would look to lose him will be there. You're also, giving a big wage to a world-class player who's coming into his prime, is a local lad, is going to be the captain of the club if you do that. is not that difficult a decision, to be honest. It's just about the numbers and how they work that out. I mean, the real spanner in the works there, by the way, on Trent, which we must mention is, and this will be the reason that Liverpool lose him if they do, is because he decides he wants to go and try playing for Real Madrid. That is such a huge factor. But if we take that out and he is willing to sign for Liverpool at a certain amount, I just think it will get done. I'd be really surprised if Liverpool were to let him go in a situation whereby he would be willing to stay. And on Van Dijk, I think his desperation to stay is absolutely clear. And again, he's not the top earner. He's not really even close to Mo Salah, really. He's playing at a world-class level in a position where he can play for longer. So for me, again, I just think that one's a much easier one to do. Salah, we have to see. And I think his huge wage packet and the fact that forwards can very, very suddenly decline is a huge factor in that one. But I've got a lot more confidence on Trent and Van Dijk. And I think if they get those ones done soon, you feel in a bit more of a confident position then around Mo Salah and what you can do around that, because you've got those two locked down, and then it becomes less urgent and you can work through it and try and find that compromise with Salah. So hopefully we hear some news on those two soon, and then maybe Mo is kind of the last domino to fall.
Yeah, well, you've got on a slot tomorrow morning, haven't you? So I'm sure someone will pitch the question contract-wise.
He did say, didn't he? He said to Vinny after the international break, you can ask me again. So we'll try again. Maybe he'll drop a bombshell that a couple of them have signed up. That would be nice.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. And I suppose the only other thing I wanted to ask you around the contract situation, and it kind of goes higher to the hierarchy, but I think it is a big decision people are looking at. Edwards and Hughes naturally are in charge. We know it's a multi-club element, but there's not that multi-club for Michael Edwards to work on. We are hearing, he's involved, he's doing bits for obvious reasons at Liverpool. There seems to be, for some, an almost absolution. While they've inherited this scenario, these all had 12 months left to go. There's no fault of their own. I've seen a few others, and I struggle to give complete absolution. I understand the mitigation of, as you mentioned, there's so much going on at the club. There's so much to change. I get all that. That's absolute mitigation. But there's a difference between mitigation and a complete defence across the board. They still knew what they were getting. They still had a job to do. How do you see it in terms of, if the worst was to happen, we're talking here for these three, how would you see it in terms of how it reflects on Hughes and Edwards, the hierarchy above?
Yeah, I think to lose all three would be pretty shocking, to be honest. I mean, you can't really get away from that one. I mean, surely there's a justification to sign at least a couple of them up and do everything. I mean, I will mention again that mitigation is, if Trent decides he wants to go to Real Madrid, regardless of what Liverpool puts in front of him, there's nothing Richard Hughes can do. That is just the situation he inherited. So and we don't quite know at the moment how that's playing out. That is something that we will only find out if it comes to that, and maybe we'll never know. So, it's hard to kind of unpick that. But a world where all three of them go, particularly because Van Dijk and Salah have said publicly they want to stay, and those deals feel doable. It feels like there's a willingness to compromise on their side, and that they can get it together. It would be hard to come out and say that they were blameless. I mean, but ironically, kind of Van Dijk actually feels now kind of like the easiest one of the three in there. Wage wise, he probably wouldn't be looking for a massive bump. He wants to stay. He's playing at that level. There's definitely more years of him playing at this level there. The Trent factor is just the Real Madrid, whether he wants to do it or not. But with Van Dijk again, how could we imagine a situation whereby he could slip through the fingers and there'd be any excuses for it? I personally couldn't. So, I mean, in terms of the blame game, we have to see how this pans out, don't we? Who they keep, who they don't, or whatever. But if it was a situation where all three went, I don't think it would be fair to sort of completely remove blame from the two new guys who are coming back. Really, they would deserve a share of the blame there. But hopefully, it doesn't come to that, and everybody's happy with how it all plays out. Well, we know they'll look at the data. We know they'll look at the stats. We know that money will come into it as well.
Deciding which credit card or loan is right for you is like trying to choose where you want to eat for dinner. Except when you finally get to the restaurant, the menu's riddled with jargon that no average foodie could understand. So at Credit Karma, we keep things simple. We show you personalized recommendations that align with your money goals and help you turn the confusing fine print into terms you can actually understand. And as a cherry on top, we provide a detailed overview for a new card or loan before you apply. That way, we can help you make decisions faster and with more confidence. Download Intuit Credit Karma today to get started.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
The time for holiday hosting is upon us, so make your second bathroom second to none with HomeDepot.com's best savings of the season. Right now, enjoy up to 40% off select online bath. Find the latest on-trend styles of vanities, faucets, showers, tubs, toilets, and more, all at prices that will let your budget relax right along with you and your beautifully renovated bath. Get up to 40% off select online bath plus free delivery at the Home Depot. Subject to availability, see HomeDepot.com/delivery for details.
Hand on heart, do you think 2 out of 3, if it is Trent and Van Dijk, Hughes and Edwards, FSG will look at that as, yeah, we'll take that. That's decent business for what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I think 2 out of 3, you'd absolutely take it now from a situation where you're none out of 3. So, the further that goes on, the more it does actually become worrying. So, But I just think, like I say, if they can get those 2 out of the 3 done, which in theory are the slightly easier ones of the 3, and then you can sit down with Salah, it gives you a little bit of breathing space because you're not panicking. You're going to lose 3 of your most important players in one summer. Work through those compromises, try everything you can to get there. And, if the 2 get signed, you almost feel a bit more confident about the 3rd being done as well, because again, it's more proof that, look, it's going to be with these guys. Trent's going to be here. He's so influential. Van Dijk's here. He's got so many more years in him at world-class level. Do you want to still be part of this? Can we just get there in terms of contract length and wage? That's how you would feel more confident about it. So it's just interesting kind of how that's going to play out. I wouldn't say 2 out of 3 is great in the sense that if the 3 you're losing is Salah and you gives them a huge job in terms of replacing him for next season. But I think, you take it as a starting point and then it gives Liverpool, like I say, a chance to breathe and hopefully work through the remainder.
Yeah, I hope by this time next year we are never talking about 3 world-class players potentially defying Liverpool or ever again, to be honest, as well. So, yeah.
But I think it shows that they don't want to end up in this situation again as well. What they've done with Konate, moving very quickly on that, even signing up Kwanzaa really quickly, signing Mamadashvili ahead of needing him because they don't want to end up in a situation where, you've got a question mark over one of your world-class players leaving or how are we going to possibly replace him. I think we're already seeing, even though the Mamadashvili signing maybe received a little criticism or question marks over why it would happen, want to get ahead of these problems. They don't want to end up in a situation like this ever again. And I think that really... That should give people confidence, actually, that the club is going back to a situation where recruitment and contracts and things are being run in a proper way and really being looked after and just being run in a sensible way after a couple of years of upheaval in that sporting director role.
Yeah, stability would be good, no doubts about it. And the next sort of big decision on the docket, I can't escape this. We seem to, and it keeps coming up, despite the fact, obviously, the XG is good, especially against, but we are scoring goals. The number 9 situation, I mean, it's interesting. There was a lot of speculation. Could even, Cody Gakpo be used there again? Slots at the start of the season. No, he's a left wing. And he's made it quite clear that it's Jota and Nunez. They are vying for that number 9 shirt. There's pretty much zero doubt about that. When you look at those 2 as, I suppose you call them a pairing, an alternate, the options, whatever you want to say, first big decision, do you think those 2 are good enough to fire Liverpool to, because this is where we're always aiming, the biggest prizes right now?
I mean, you could do. I think it relies a lot on getting Jota on the pitch, an awful lot, really. I think the more you rely on Nunez, the more you kind of open yourself up to his inconsistencies and the fact that he can just have a bad game where his finishing is off and he's getting caught offside a lot. And if that comes in a game that's crucial and you lose a tight 1-0 and he misses a couple of chances, that can be the difference between winning the Premier League or not. And it can be the difference in the knockout Champions League tie, can't it? So, I think, like I say, I think Jota starting in that centre forward role, you absolutely could win the biggest prizes. But it's the problem in recent years has been getting them on the pitch consistently. And if you can't do that, then you're going to see a lot of Núñez. And again, like I say, you opened yourself up a little to the fact he can be very, very inconsistent. So, I think a lot depends on Jota's fitness there in terms of, how Liverpool get on really this season and what they get from the centre forward. Although, I will continue to say, I don't think he's been perfect in that role so far. He's got goals and been influential, but I still think there's been some rough edges there that we've seen in his game in that centre forward role that makes you sort of throws up a few questions in terms of what Slot might want in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest on this to introduce this. I am struggling at the moment to see any world where an honest Slot's going to shape the team in his mould, and we know what he's starting to look for. We're starting to get a sense of that. I'm really struggling to see any situation, not that it's impossible, where both of those are the number 9s at the club next season. Just thinking that. Are you on the same lines, or do you think he will try and keep working with the long term? I'm being honest, big decision. I'm really struggling to see it.
Yeah, I struggle to see Núñez being here next season, to be honest. I mean, I've written as much already, and I know people will say maybe gone too early this season to say that, but I still just struggle to see him putting it together sufficiently to make himself a long-term option there. I wonder how happy he'll be with the kind of bench role that he's likely to have this season on the basis of Jota keeping him out. And there were just too many aspects of his game that need sudden improvement over the course of this season to see him really being a long-term option there. And I think he's still a player who's got, he still retains some value. So I think he signed a 6-year contract when he signed, so that means he'll have 3 years left. So there's still, his value's been protected there. There will be clubs who are interested because he can score goals at a certain level. He could be the right fit for a different team that plays in a different way, actually. I think there's a good player there, but he's just not a Liverpool player. I really struggle to see.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
I struggle to see Núñez being here, really, and I think the ideal situation for Slot, you can already kind of see, is getting a centre forward that absolutely fits what he wants. A bit tidier in build-up and a bit of physical presence, but also a finisher. And then, if you have him and Jota as your two options, will be, really, really ideal in terms of your options to that centre-forward role.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I know we'll both be the same. We're desperate to be proved wrong. We're all desperate for Núñez to hit 25 somehow this season. Being no doubt about that. I was going to ask, because I get the impression, and I kind of even think, like, knowing how we've talked about Edwards and Hughes before, they plan ahead, don't they? We talk about 3 transfer windows in front and everything. Do you think they'll be scouring the market already for this is the forward that we're looking for, a 9 option?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's why those kind of links to Marmoush the other day, I would be kind of reluctant to shoot those down, because I do think centre forward is an area that Liverpool will be looking at, because this Núñez question is there. Again, not massively convinced he was a kind of a statistically backed signing, if I'm honest. I think it was very much kind of one that the manager was very, very keen on when Klopp was here. So, yeah, I just think it'll be a situation where, they're looking to kind of make a sale there and thinking that is very much a huge possibility going into next summer. And obviously, if you do that, then you need to do your legwork and your homework in terms of who could come in as a replacement. So I've got no doubt that Liverpool are having a look at players who can play that number 9 role. Kind of interesting, by the way, to see if Chiesa ever appears there, whether that becomes an option. Because all of a sudden, then you give yourself a chance to say Chiesa has a run there, and it works out and he works well there, and you think you can consistently get him on the pitch. Then maybe you need sort of shifts, and you think, well, someone who can back up and be a young option behind Mo Salah would be a really, really good option instead. So I think they'll probably keep things open. And again, it's like every time you hear a link to a player, it's probably quite difficult at the moment outside of a transfer window to shoot those links down, because ultimately I'm pretty sure they'll be scouting a lot of players in a lot of positions, and forwards who can play all over the pitch really, and because they don't exactly know what they're going to need, but they've got a good idea that they might need a forward soon. And I think that probably links to the idea that Núñez, after 3 years maybe it won't have worked out, and they'll think that let's kind of cut our losses now.
Will be interesting. I mean, yeah, if Salah goes as well, you could potentially be looking for 2, so they could be very, very busy this summer. And but people are thinking like this is just selected. Just to be clear, Liverpool have played the 10 games as in 900 minutes on the pitch so far this season, aside from extra additional time, etc. Darwin Núñez has played 305 of them, so that's a third essentially, and 90 minutes in a Carabao Cup as well. That's not to be derogatory of that, but we know what that's saying. We know what the stats are telling us. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Now, this one, if we move on to the midfield, this is an interesting one. And I suppose a bit of the charge for this big decision might be a bit of recency bias, because for good reason, I know you've talked about it and you've written about it, Ryan Gravenberch has been great this season. There's no two ways about it. I know you said you probably fancy him almost for a Player of the Year contender, at least that way. Sam Maguire wrote about it, says that Liverpool's most important midfielder at the moment. Big decision for this one. Element of recency bias? Or would you say Ryan Gravenberch is our most important midfielder right now?
Well, I'd say it's probably between him and McAllister, isn't it? In terms of, Szoboszlai still a little bit of inconsistency there. I still think he's been fantastic, and I think he gets a little bit too much stick, but I think he's probably below those two in terms of his importance to the team and the balance he brings. I think McAllister and Gravenberch are the two really. I would struggle to split the two if I'm being honest. I mean, what it is about Gravenberch, it's such a nice surprise that he's playing this well, that he's coming in and he's doing this role which is different to anything we kind of seen him do. That is an element that sort of makes it even better, is the fact that nobody really saw it coming. But I think in terms of importance, I would kind of struggle to split those two. I think they're pretty much on a level, although they play in very different ways. They just work so nicely as a partnership, both really, really intelligent, do everything you want on the defensive side, so threatening on the other side of the ball as well. And they're both really brilliant and absolutely crucial to the balance of Liverpool's midfield and the balance of the team as a whole, I would say.
I suppose the test for Gravenberch is that it's a great start. There's no doubts about that. McAllister's done it season after season, be it at Brighton, be it in the World Cup, be it now at Liverpool, we've seen it. Can he keep that consistency to, I suppose, keep or be matched that way against McAllister longer term, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we've been saying this sort of since the season start, really, is okay. I remember I wrote something about him after the first 3 games saying, he'd been absolutely fantastic, but can he keep it going? And then he did. But now, it's next international break. Can you keep it going in there? Can you keep it going against tougher opposition? Because they are coming up now as well. So some really, really interesting games for him to get stuck into. And, I think from what we've seen so far, I'm really excited to see him in these big challenges. I think, his ability to break lines in some of the big games might be absolutely crucial. So really looking forward to that, and just seeing him, trying to eat up ground and his defensive work against these big sides is going to be important as well. So, yeah, really looking forward to see how he gets on with that. But as you say, it is about getting to the end of the season and people saying he was consistent. He very rarely dropped a stinker. He was up there, and so that is the kind of big test for him. But I've got a lot of confidence it'll come through, because I just think he's, we've seen already how good he can be and how good he is.
Yeah, fingers crossed, just keep it going. That's all we're asking, consistency now. And this one, now remember, as I'm saying this, it was yourself that wrote about it, wasn't it? Zubimendi this week, that piece, the free one on Substack, in case anyone's missed it, well worth the read. And there's a couple of bits I kind of wanted to pull, because it's interesting. I think it's a great article, but he was in the research, it was talked about, and the article detail, that almost, and I'm using that word research specifically, because of the management change and what we're looking for, the previous research on sixes has almost gone out the window a little bit because the profile's different. I suppose the big decision for this now, what sort of, and it might necessarily just be an outright six, what sort of midfielder do you think Arne Slot might be looking for in January specifically?
Yeah, so it was kind of put to me, I was speaking to sources really, is that, it had been a shift on the basis of what they kind of needed in that midfield. And it was said to me that, funnily enough, kind of some of the previous targets we'd gone for last summer wouldn't actually have been considered a good fit now had they signed. So, Moises Caicedo, Romeo Lavia, they aren't looking for that kind of physical destroyer in that area of the pitch. It's good. By the way, they're both fantastic on the ball.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily need those destroying qualities. It's more about someone who can be a tempo setter, circulate the ball. And I think Zubimendi is very much of that ilk, really. And that was the sort of profile shift. And that was put to me as kind of a big reason why they couldn't get Zubimendi, but they didn't have a list kind of beyond that because he just hadn't had the time with bedding in a new recruitment staff. They were looking for a new sort of midfielder. So, that was one of the reasons he didn't have a list that the recruitment staff who were already there that they could immediately go to, because they hadn't done the homework really on that type of midfielder and who else would kind of fit the bill in that regard. So kind of thought that was pretty interesting really, but it suggests to me that, if they can't get Zubimendi and, still hasn't signed that contract, but we'll see, maybe he wants to see the season out or whatever. And again, maybe Liverpool will think, well, we'll wait till the end of the season. Then we want someone who we think is going to be perfect. That is entirely possible. But if not, they've had time now to sort of seek out alternatives who are of a similar sort of profile. So if they don't think they can get Zubimendi even next summer, or they don't want to rely on the possibility of that and they want to kind of make sure they get someone in, then January feels like a possibility for them to get someone in. They've had the time now to have a look who's out there and find someone. I mean, the other aspect we must mention as well, by the way, is if they can't see anyone out there who they think is good enough to do that, or they don't think anyone's out there who kind of moves the dial for them, that is another element that we've seen Liverpool sit out windows for. So that is an option that's available to them. So we'll have to kind of see how that goes. But I think, I think that's kind of, we know now that they're looking for that tempo setter, that metronome in there. And they've had time to have a look and see if there's anyone else out there. So I think that kind of bodes well in terms of boosting the opportunities in January or the possibility of something.
Yeah.
But whether it does or not, we have to see as ever.
Do you think on that, and I suppose the other big decision to that is, fans will probably be less sympathetic. I think it was interesting, like you said from the articles, but we almost talked about it in the summer. It's like, okay, if you can't get Zubimendi, you move down to option 2, option 3, because we know we need someone. But actually, probably sounding like, listen, there wasn't an option 2 or an option 3 because we didn't know what profile we're looking for. Now they do. Now they've had time. They've got the right people in place. January's still a bit of time away. Can you understand that big decision? There'd be probably very little sympathy if they did, as you put, sit out January. You think, come on, you've had a lot of time to look. And this could actually not derail or be too strong, but surely it's the time to reinforce because really you wanted it in the summer.
Well, if they sit out January and then get Zubimendi in the summer and he proves to be absolutely everything they needed and world class and the one that they would sign in January will be a step below that and probably not move the dial for them, would people be more sympathetic with that? I think that's a tough one. I think you've got Liverpool's record and the fact that they're so good at signing players is based on the fact that they will wait and they will wait for the right ones. And, I know what you're saying in terms of it will be fantastic for them to get the boost in January. And that is possible that they found someone who they think fits and will be perfect for them. But it's, the question is, can they do that? Is there someone there who they think is good enough? And you don't want them signing someone who isn't good enough to move the dial. And I've seen so many names mentioned in the past of players who really, have since proven not to be good enough. So got to be really careful of that, I think. And we'll just have to see what happens in January and whether, could be that Zubimendi has reached a point where he thinks, I don't really want to do this anymore. We're getting beat every week. Maybe Sociedad think it's time for us to cash in on the clause he's got in his contract. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, he's never seen a PowerPoint of Crosby breach, so we'll have to see what comes. And the final one, I wanted to ask you for the midfield. And I know you're a fan of this player. Good reason. He had a brilliant season last year. The amount of almost, he probably wouldn't like the tag, but he became a super sub a lot for Liverpool last campaign, didn't he? Harvey Elliott, fingers crossed. We've seen the rehab photos, which is great. Suggestions that he's not a million miles away from even getting back on the pitch as well, even talk of the end of this month. How big is Harvey Elliott's return for Liverpool?
Yeah, I think it's massive. I think he's really, really important in terms of, he would have played an awful lot of games in this between the last international break and this one, because the rotation was absolutely needed there. And I don't just think as well that would have been kind of, he's coming in for the Carabao Cup or whatever. I think he could have started a lot of Premier League games and given an opportunity to really kind of rotate in that midfield that was really lost. And we've seen, that first choice three has had to get through an awful lot of work, haven't they? And Harvey Elliott could have really relieved that. But also, his impact as a sub is massive in games. What would he have been like in that Nottingham Forest game where you just needed to pen them in, keep the ball, keep finding little gaps in between their formation and finding little cute balls in behind, perfectly weighted to give you a chance to win the game. I just think I think he's really, really important. I think he's a massive player for Liverpool. And I think we saw in the summer as well over pre-season just how good he can be in a slot system. So really, really excited that he's going to be back soon. I think he can play a huge role for them.
It's interesting, and he probably wouldn't like this either. You're right, the midfield three's been so good. It's been Szoboszlai typically in that 10 for natural reasons. Do you think in terms of what he should be setting himself realistically for his big decision, do you think it should be like just working as an alternate, and Slot might be looking that way to think, at least that, because you're right, Szoboszlai is clocking up minutes big time again, even for Hungary, it's another 180. So Elliott's the rotation, if you want to call it that. Or do you think it's realistic to say, you should be knocking Szoboszlai out that team after last season?
I think it should be balanced. I think there's an opportunity for it to be a kind of Gakpo-Diaz job sharing sort of approach, or what we've seen with Tsimikas and Robertson a little bit. I suppose it's probably more weighted towards Robertson and Diaz in both those cases, really. But I do think there's an opportunity for more rotation in those positions, and maybe we'll see a little bit more of Gakpo in this next sort of tranche of fixtures, hopefully. But I think there's he can make a really strong case because he's not physically the same as Szoboszlai, but he's a really hard worker. Offer an awful lot off the ball, and we'll try and cover ground. And then what he's got in terms of quality in that final third, the criticism that there has been of Szoboszlai that he's not as intricate in those areas, or he doesn't, keep the ball as well, or use it exactly how you might want to. And Elliott has got that. I think he's got unbelievable quality. So I think that could be a really fair fight. Really, it's just a case of him getting his fitness back up and making sure he's ready. But once he does that, I think he can. I think it could be a 50-50 fight, and we'll see how that kind of pans out in terms of who can make the case to the managers to start the most games.
Yeah, we if we can get that sort of Gakpo-Diaz sort of fight, that's all we're looking for, aren't we? Two in every position, pushing each other. That is the ultimate aim. So I can't see as any sort of negative. It'd be interesting to see how he gets on and whether he comes back in, because he has missed a big part of the season that way. And just good
on that. Sorry, just interestingly, I think that for me is why I think Liverpool kind of, you see that competition, you see Gakpo and Diaz doing what they're doing, Tsimikas coming in for Robertson doing quite well. You could have Szoboszlai and Elliott doing that. We want to see a little bit more of Chiesa as well to help those forwards out, and Conor Bradley's waiting in the wings at right back. There's unbelievable strength in depth at centre half. For me, that is just why Liverpool could do with another midfielder, really, because Gravenberch and McAllister at the moment, so much is being asked of them. I know Curtis Jones is there, and I think he will play a lot of games this season, but I just think, you can only relieve one of them at a time. If you have another option there who really gives the manager what he needs and someone he really trusts, which is, not quite the case with Endo, I think that would just be so helpful in terms of keeping the squad fit and making sure every rotation comes in and is bringing real quality to the table. So that, it's an interesting one in that regard. I think that just kind of underlines, if you're having someone of the quality of Harvey Elliott coming back to challenge Szoboszlai, you could maybe do another one there in that sort of deeper line too, who has the quality to come in as well.
Yeah, it would be amazing. There's no two ways about it. The starting three have been brilliant, but for this next part, and moving into January, if you've got Elliott, Jones coming back firing, and you've got another one, you've got proper rotation, it seems, in there at the same time. It will be interesting to see. You can breathe. That's the Liverpool questions done. We always ask a little one at the end about out of football. Everyone's lost their heads. Thomas Tuchel, England manager. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, do you know what? I do kind of sympathise with the view that it would be nice if it was an English coach on the basis that, you know, it's international football, isn't it? It should be kind of this, you know, the players are selected on the basis of being English. You know, why shouldn't the managers be as well? And it's just kind of a case of, look, this is the best we can put together versus your best, and that's kind of the fun of international football. But what I would say is that there's no English coach out there who is of the level of Thomas Tuchel at the moment, that's for sure. And I think that's something that the FA really needs to look at. They can talk about pathways as much as they want, but at the end of the day, you know, we've all seen the figures that have been tweeted this week about how much it costs to do your A licence or get up to A licence in Germany and Spain versus how much it costs to do in England, and that surely is the biggest block really on more people becoming qualified coaches and learning there. So they really need to reconsider that. So, you know, ideally would have been an English coach, but I completely understand why they've gone with a German coach. I just think it should also be, as much as I think he's a great appointment, and you know, with that squad should have a really good shot at winning the World Cup, to be honest. And he seems really happy to be there as well, which is great. But I do think it should be a moment of reflection from the FA and thinking, how can we make this better? How can we create the conditions whereby we don't need to go out and appoint a German manager? Because, you know, in the same way that Germany aren't going out there and having a look at the English managers out there. I mean, no surprise because there aren't many great ones. But yeah, you need to create a situation where there's a whole host of potential managers to come in and take England who will be of the required level, and that's clearly not the situation. But I think just on the basis, I think he's a really good appointment. I think he'll do really well.
I just thought it was interesting more than anything. And this is, as I'm saying this, it's not criticising all journalists, but the same paper that said it was a national shame that did that, also, as people pointed out, had a headline the week before that they wanted Pep to be the England manager. So yeah, I don't think Pep's from Wythenshawe last time I checked.
No, and all the asking about whether they sing the national anthem and stuff, I just find that stuff and those aspects of covering England so pathetic. Like, it's one of the reasons I've never really had any interest in kind of covering the national team, to be honest, because I think you need a certain madness within you to do that, because all the questions seem to be of that ilk, or and the pressure they put on stupid friendlies and all this sort of stuff. It's a mad thing. But, you know, Tuchel will hope he can kind of cut through that, and he has probably got, is it the best squad in world football and in international football at the moment? It's certainly in the top three. So, you know, with his expertise in knockout football as well, they've got a really good chance of going and winning something, which maybe that will take away from some of the madness of the journalists, and then it'll be and maybe we'll see more English coaches come through, and it'll be a happier environment in future.
No doubt. Well, it's former club Chelsea. We've got them on Sunday. Let's hope that is good. But ladies and gents, we are at the end of our big decisions. It wasn't as bad as you thought it would be, David, fair to say?
No, I didn't feel like I was being put on the rack. It was okay.
There we go. So all it leaves me to say is, for the insights, for the big decisions, it's much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
And ladies and gents, those are the big decisions for Anfield Index.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.